Welcome, welcome. Hello. How is everybody? You guys, I've been looking forward to being with you and having this conversation. Literally, I decided on the topic about a month ago. So I'm so excited to be here. Hello. I noticed you guys are already starting in the chat, and we have folks joining from literally all corners of the planet, which is awesome. I think this that says to me that this particular topic really struck a chord. So just very excited to be having this conversation. So you're here for how to deal with difficult people without losing your job or your mind. You're in the right place. And we're going to be having this conversation. And I'm guessing, and I'll introduce myself in a moment. Don't know me yet, but I am guessing that if you are here, it's not because you just happen to have some free time on a Wednesday, but you are here because some of the impact and the challenges that come from working with people who we might just want to call difficult, to be kind. Make sure my phone doesn't interrupt us. Okay. And I want to hear from you guys. What is the impact to you of working with difficult people, right? And what do we even consider difficult people? And while you guys start sharing a little bit about that in the chat, I'm gonna go ahead and start in on the conversation. And also, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, so first of all, because we're starting in fast and furious because we have so much to cover, let me introduce myself. My name is Hedin. I'm an executive coach and a leadership trainer and a speaker. And I love to create and apply and train on frameworks that help people get out of their own way. That's probably the best way that I can articulate it. And for you guys who've been with me before, if you have a better way to say it, please definitely go ahead and throw it in the chat. But that's the best way I could think about it. I think in particular, as it relates to this conversation around how to deal with difficult people without losing your job or your mind. Now, my background is in management consulting and strategy execution. So you'll find that a lot of the training and the frameworks that I create and that I use with my clients are focused around and have a very slant, because it's my belief that in order to be strategic, we need to use our best thinking. We need to use the best part of our brain. We need to be intentional. We can't be strategic and reactive at the same time. And the objective is to be strategic as often as possible. So you'll hear this in different ways as we're going through the conversation today. I like this to be interactive, just full transparency. I think there are about 1,600 people registered for this event. And I see in the chat, we have folks joining from, again, literally all over the planet. And I see folks joining from the European continent, here in the States and other parts of America, the African continent. So you're literally everywhere. And I love this. And what that says to me is that it doesn't matter, and you guys let me know if this is right, it doesn't matter your background, your level of education, your level of income, your span of control, your decision authority. We all find ourselves often stumbling, and impacted working with what we might consider to be difficult people. Is that fair? So I'm going to go back to your comments. And yeah, I see, as far as what it's like to work with difficult people, emotional exhaustion. Yes, JB. Anybody else? Emotional exhaustion. Absolutely. Draining. It's absolutely draining. It is. What else? The worst is difficult bosses. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. A little bit more about that as we go. Yeah, it makes you tired. You guys, we all have, it's funny because, those first few responses are really about what it takes out of us to deal with difficult people. The level of exhaustion, and I would say ultimately depletion, that shows up when we're in that space and dealing with difficult people. Emotionally draining, stress, rework, gray hair. What else? Yeah. And definitely a lot of introspection, Bradley, spot on, to make sure it's not my right before we project it, because we're not infallible. We're not infallible. So sometimes it is our issue, but sometimes it's not. And that's the conversation we're going to be having today. And here's the thing, in all fairness, we've probably all been the difficult person. I know I've been the difficult person. And we're going to talk about why that is, why, I'm back honestly and openly and without judgment at your past and how you've shown up. You can see where you've been the difficult person as well, likely. And you're also going to understand why that is. But here's the purpose of the conversation. This has gotten a little personal for, hold on, I have a huge screen, you guys, so there's a lot. There are a lot of moving pieces, and I want to make sure that I can see everything all at once. This got personal. I don't know if some of you might have seen my post last week about my son. Did any of you see that post about my son? Give me a quick yes, and that you know what I'm talking about. There is a post that I shared about an experience that my son had. Now, this is my younger son, my 13-year-old. So I'll share that with you. And that was this after we've already had this scheduled. So it was interesting that it showed up in this way and at this time. And I know a lot of you know what that was about. I'll go ahead and tell you briefly. So I have 3 magnificent kids. My youngest is 13 years old. We were on the way to school on Monday, and he said, I don't want to go to school. And I'm like, yeah, of course you don't want to go to school. It's almost school year. He's in 7th grade. He's ready for summer. And so then I asked, well, what has you say that today? Because I assumed it was just the usual, I don't want to go to school. So, and he said, something happened on Friday. And it was like, this is Monday, right? And I'm like, what happened on Friday? He said, it was running day. And I was going by, a girl, and she was waving her arms. So I glanced over at her. When I looked at her, she said to me, what are you looking at, fat ass N-word? So I was shocked, and my heart dropped. And it was so painful. I mean, I still feel it now. And once the off, I was really clear about the conversation I wanted to have with him. And you'll see where this fits into the conversation we're having today. Right? The first thing I wanted him to know, and that I want you to know, is that other people's bad behavior and reaction or attitude towards you has very to do with you, and almost entirely everything to do with them. And I'll give you, just to clarify, I don't know anything about this little 13-year-old girl, this young girl. But here's what I do know for sure, and let me know if this resonates. If she were living her best life, never, ever, on any level of imagination, could we envision that she'd be engaging or relating to another human being in that way. Is that fair? Never. If she were living her best life, that would not be happening. So now, related to that, the other thing I wanted my son to understand, because there were 3 things. The thing was, hurt people hurt people. Yes. Now, as it turns out, this little girl, we're in a great school district, but there aren't many people who look like us, right? And that's fine. I love where we live. I love our community, but to make matters kind of more challenging and personal, this little girl is actually one of their few who look like us, which calls to question what's going on inside of her and what sort of internalized self-judgment or hatred, or who knows what's going on in there, right? Goes out to her. But I wanted him to understand, hurt people hurt people. Yes, that was the second thing. And then the third thing I wanted him to understand is that while we can't control other people's behavior, their attitude, we even taking full responsibility for our energy and how we show up and how prepared we are, and how well we communicate and how we try to connect and are good people. Even though we're responsible for all of that, we are not responsible for other people's reactions. The other thing we're responsible for, though, and this is the third point I wanted to drive home for him and for all of us here, is that there's a lot so I want us to focus on what we can, and what my son could control is to what extent he was going to let this person's bad behavior and poor choices in his day, his week, his month, his year, how he relates and collaborates with his other classmates, and how he shows up at home, his perspective on himself. So that really seemed to land with him. And again, it's even now it's a little difficult talking about it, because again, it took a second, more than a second, for the shock to wear off. And then we launched into that conversation because difficult people are everywhere. Difficult people are not going away. And sometimes they're not just difficult, they're downright awful. And so we get to and need to decide what role we're going to let them play in how we show up, and whether we get distracted and derailed from what we say is important to, and our priorities, our goals, the impact we have, the legacy we want to build. Are you guys with me? So I wanted to start the conversation, just very transparently letting you know how this showed up in my life, very unexpectedly past week. And now, so I understand there's some glitching audio. I'm hoping that it's being caught correctly. But let me know if you're still having trouble hearing me. It looks like a lot of people can hear me just fine. So my apologies if the audio is glitching. I'm going to go ahead and continue. We do have a lot to cover. And hopefully this is going to be a fantastic conversation that you're going to find ways to apply immediately. Okay, so your audio is great and some audio is glitching. Very strange. I wonder if it has something to do with the connections. The auto repeats short snippets. So interesting. Okay, we're going to keep going though. Thank you guys, and definitely support each other if you can. Dad, stop me. try to wave me down. Stop me again. So let's get into this conversation, because here's what I find. Right, my background, again, I started out as a management consultant, and what I found, as I'm working with these senior partners who are bringing in a lot of revenue and driving a tremendous amount of work, is that some were driving a tremendous, and people were really like in line and would wait on the beach or on the bench for those partners and their engagements to have a spot so that they can go join that team. Yeah. And then there were others who still got to the finish line, drove a tremendous amount of revenue and value for our clients, but they left a wake of bodies in their path. And in its simplest form, one was easier to work with than the other. So the other would be, right, in general, what we refer to as that difficult person. So we're going to get into what makes that so. And here, let's get the slides going. First, we want things to go according to plan. We want things to go according to plan. We expect traffic to go according to plan. We expect our meetings to go according to plan. We expect other people's reactions and response in a plan, right? We want things to go according to plan. And that's fine. That's the expectation. We prepare so that things have a higher likelihood of going according to plan. But here's how I like to put it, which again, I'm only being somewhat facetious, and that's, if you're only going to be effective when things are going according to plan, what are you going to do the other 90% of the time? Is that fair? What are you going to do the rest of the time? I don't know what industry everyone is in. And in fact, I want you guys to please do share your industries, because I want it to be really clear and transparent that difficult people impact not every corner, but every corner of every industry. So based on that premise, if you're only going to be effective, people behave the way you want them to behave, then what are you going to do the other 90% of the time? Is that fair? What are your 90% of the time? And I see you guys sharing where you're from: government, healthcare, IT, medical devices, insurance, marketing, therapy, clinical research. Let's see, nonprofit, academia, health, IT, education, government, aviation, mental health. Yeah, so much. So basically, I don't think there's an industry. If there are people involved, there's a challenge with difficult people. So again, I'm going to do the other 90% of the time. So let's get into that part of the conversation. The work I do with my clients, and where you probably spend 90% of your time, is managing how we relate to other people. So we're going to get into that. But here's the part I really want to hone in on. That in order for someone to be difficult and actually hijack our day, our year, whatever that's going to look like, it requires a decision on our part as well. So we're going to talk about the decision driver journey. I told you at the beginning, I like creating frameworks and models that help both make better, more strategic decisions. And this is one of them. So the decision driver journey, I'm going to share a simplified version now. So you'll go ahead and see that in a moment. But it's really meant to explain why people do what they do, even if it doesn't seem to make sense, even if it seems to be counterintuitive, and basically take them farther away from what they say they want to accomplish versus closer to what they want to accomplish. So let's get in. Here's the decision driver journey. This is a simplified version. Now, for those of you who've been in my sessions before, I know you've seen this, and I want you to really lean into what you already know about the decision driver model and start to make those connections as we go. Okay. So at the bottom of the decision driver model is what I refer to as the concerned citizen. Now, the concerned citizen, most of their decisions are driven by fear. We typically end up in this concerned citizen space where you've had a particularly bad spell at work, are low on self-esteem, have taken a serious blow as it relates to your career, and had some sort of kind of, again, let's say setback. Again, we might have internalized some extended criticism or failed attempts at kind of winning someone over or trying to get it right and get validation, all those things. So in this space, we're often shrinking and playing. Really, all we want is to keep ourselves safe and stay out of the crosshairs of whatever it is that we think is potentially causing us harm or putting us at risk. Right? So that is here at the bottom, the concerned citizen making decisions out of fear. But here's what I want you to understand about making decisions out of fear. Yeah. Now, the only reason we make decisions out of fear, right? We make decisions out of fear is to feel more safe. I want you to think back as it relates to your career. When is the last time you made a decision out of fear and then actually felt more safe? So go ahead and think about it for a second. When is the last time you made fear and actually felt more safe? Now, because there's so many of you in the chat, so I'm not going to be able to catch everything, but I'm going to bet that you might not be able to think of one. And now the, tens of thousands of people who have participated in a conversation around the decision driver journey, there are very few examples. And that is because when we make decisions out of fear, although it's counterintuitive, it doesn't actually have us feel more safe. Oftentimes what it does is it has us want to lock ourselves down even more. It has us even more finely tuned into everything else that could possibly go wrong. Does that resonate, or does that sound familiar for you, or now or in the past? Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. So again, it's counterintuitive, right? We think we're taking care of ourselves, but making decisions out of fear don't move us towards what we want. They actually move us farther away from the safety we're looking for. Now, the next one is when we're making decisions out of ego, right? To look good, to get validation, to get the gold star, all those things. That's referred to as the self-conscious careerist. Now, here's what I want you to know about the self-conscious careerist. The self-conscious careerist is probably the closest we have that's probably the closest we have to a default. The self-conscious careerists, above all else, the best way to describe them is that they're very reactive, incredibly reactive, because their sense of satisfaction and comfort and safety, and whether things are going well, and even how they're deciding they're going to show up and engage, is driven by whether or not they look good, which means that there's an incredible amount of time in their heads kind of thinking what everybody else is thinking. Like, what did those raised eyebrows mean? Why did they ask me that question in the meeting? Why did they put my name last on the list? Like, ridiculous things like that. Now, as I say that, and as I call them ridiculous, you can probably to people in your professional past who fit the bill. People in this space have to be right at all times, even if they're wrong. So as you can imagine, it makes it rather challenging to work with people who are here, because all they want is that an undying validation. Worst part, and what I need you to know about this, is that validation is incredibly short-lived. So even when they get the validation, immediately in pursuit of the next source of validation. Does this resonate, you guys? Can you guys kind of see this in people in your environment? I want you to take note and start to look for where this shows up. The last one, this is the career CEO or the chief strategist. Of course, this is what we all aspire to. This is where we all want to be. And this is what I want you to understand about being at this level. The chief strategist or career CEO level, it doesn't mean that we're not stressed out. It doesn't mean that things don't go off the rails. What it does mean is that our decisions, our behavior, our actions are driven by something bigger a bigger intention than simply trying to get it right. You guys with me? So it's driven by a bigger intention than simply trying to get it right. The problem, when we're trying to get it right, as soon as any mishap surfaces, as soon as somebody doesn't behave or respond the way we expect them to, a slide deal goes out, they fall apart because the entire intention and driver was to get it right. So of course it makes sense that they fall apart when that's the case. So here's a quick glance at the full slide so you can get that picture. Okay. Now, what we want, if we want to be stritters, and if we want to have effective relationship, we want as much as possible to be making decisions from the top. Right? As much as possible, we want to be the very top. And that is because that's where strategy lives. Those decisions are strategic. Yes, those decisions are strategic. We want to spend as much of our time there as we can. Yeah, I'm seeing if I'm missing any of your questions. Yeah, our intentions and subconscious thoughts may drive us to make certain decisions. Yes, absolutely. And Sumitra, knowing that, we need extra conscious and conscientious about what's behind the decision, which is why it's so important to be up here driven by a bigger purpose or intent. Because here's the thing. Let's say that we make a wrong decision. Let's say that things, go off the rails. Let's say that we get massively rejected or humiliated and things fall apart. Yes? That bigger intention or purpose is more powerful than the discomfort of having fallen apart. So think about that for a second. That's why it's so powerful to make decisions driven by something that's truly meaningful, because the decision, that commitment doesn't evaporate because something didn't go according to plan, because somebody said no, because you were embarrassed, because you were rejected, because you got it wrong. It doesn't go away. That commitment remains there and helps you course correct, so that you take that moment. You have, like, as one of my coaches says, the 5-second funeral. Yeah, you have second funeral for the disappointment of whatever that was. And then you reconnect. Okay, that didn't go the way we wanted. Now what has to happen? So let me go on. We have a lot to cover still. So let's continue with that. But thank you so much for keeping the comments going, for suggesting engaging with one another. You guys are amazing. Thank you for that. Now, I want to let you know there will be a spot for Q&A, and I'll actually stay on later for Q&A for anyone who's interested. I believe there are some of the destinations where your messages don't get to me. So if I'm ignoring you, or if it feels like I'm ignoring you, there's a good chance that messages from that aren't making it to me. I know that I can see LinkedIn, and I know that I can see YouTube, but I can't see your comments if you're in a different destination. So Facebook doesn't seem to be coming through. So just letting you guys know. Same for Twitter. Okay, let's continue. Now, so here's the question. See, the decisions, and first, before I get to the question, because there's a couple different things going on here that I want to make sure we tie in. A lot of different things together to make this as valuable as possible. So let's hope that this all connects. So here's what I want you to understand at this point. See, the decisions that difficult people make that have them show up as difficult live below the line, right? And that probably makes sense to you guys based on what we've discussed. However, your response or reaction to difficult people still lives below the line. So I want to know if you guys can see that. They also live below the line. Both are coming from a place of being reactive, a place of it's all about me. What did that mean about me? What are they trying to say about me? Is somebody trying to show me up? I need to have the last word. I need to let them know I'm right and that they're wrong. All of those perspectives or frames are coming from below the line. Okay, think about that. I want to hear about that. What do you guys think about that? Because see, here's the thing. We can engage with difficult people and we can recognize that they're difficult people, but the displeasure, let's say, of dealing with their difficulty ends as soon as we're no longer engaging with them, right? I want you to distinguish this. So we deal with difficult people dealing with difficult people. That's not what this is about, but rather that the impact they have on us is limited to, it's so uncomfortable dealing with this person, or they're so unfriendly or gristly, or however you want to put it, or they're so antagonistic. And in that moment, there's the displeasure. And then as soon as it's done, you're done with the displeasure and you go on to the rest of your day. What I want to distinguish that when we consider difficult people a problem, many times we've turned it into something personal. And what happens when we turn it into something personal is that we let their bad behavior hijack how we show up. It hijacks the rest of our day. It hijacks our attitude and our ability to engage with our teams and bring our best thinking and on track and get strategic about what to do about their difficulty. It hijacks all of that. And all of that just kind of falls away. And the only thing that's left is the annoyance caused by this person and the impact that they're having on you. So I want you guys to see that distinction. This is not about that you're going to like dealing with it in life, but I want you to notice that there are difficult people in your life who you just kind of let it roll off you. You just, it just kind of rolls off you when they're difficult. Like it's not a big deal. And then there are other people that knowing you're going to go talk to them, you feel like you have to brace yourself. Is that resonating, you guys? Is that resonating? Because I want you to see that distinction. When you get to that place, right, of feeling like you need to brace yourself, right, because they're going to say something rude, or they're not going to be prepared, or they're going to be dismissive, or they're not going to have taken something seriously, or whatever the case is, they're going to interrupt you talking again. They're going to be combative, whatever the case is. You can prepare for each of those, but when you're hijacked, you can't, right? When you're hijacked, you can't. So in that sense, difficult people are spam for your career. Spam, just like when you're online and you're trying to do something productive, and then all of a sudden, ridiculous ads show up. And, as I said before you know it, you're no longer doing research for that next presentation. Now you're taking a quiz on what kind of Disney princess you are. That's spam. That redirected your intention, your focus, your priority, what you said was important, onto something that is actually meaningless and unimportant and impacts nothing. So difficult people can become spam for our leaders. They become spam for our presence. They become priorities. They become spam for the possibilities we've set for ourselves and for our teams. They become spam for our plans. You guys with me? So I want you to notice that when we both show up below that line, right? When we both show up there, that's when they become spam. That's when we take it home with us. That's when we internalize it. That's when Sunday night blues, if our boss is the one who's a difficult person. And in fact, it doesn't have to be your boss. It can be your colleagues. It can be that you're in an environment that's, not entirely supportive, that's filled with people then reacting to other difficult people. Of course it's exhausting. Of course it's draining, right? Right? It absolutely is. And this is all day, every day. Yes, they derail the important work that we're up to. Derail the important work we're up to. And yeah, I noticed, Saria, you said finalize spam and optimistic feedback. Now look, feedback can be critical. It doesn't even need to be optimistic, right? I mean, let's face it, the only reason we're not able to receive feedback is because we're down here. We're below the line. You guys see that? So even if the feedback is not perfect, if you're dealing above the line, as we said earlier in the conversation, we're gonna pause, take a breath. We're gonna look at what's actually happening, decide what truth there is in the feedback or in the criticism or whatever the case is, right? And then we're going to decide what decision to make. But we can only do that when we're at the top. We can't do that when we're below the line. Because then it's just, again, a difficult person, a reactive person reacting to another person. That's what we're doing. Let's see. The most difficult thing in life is people is so difficult, and also at work find difficult people. Yes. I mean, difficult people are in every part of our lives, fair? They're in every part of our lives. So we get to decide, right? Back to number 3 in my conversation with my son after the interaction at school. And if we have time, I'll give you a little update on that at the end. But back to number 3, we get to decide what impact they're going to have, whether they're going to hijack and redirect our intentions, all our goals, our capabilities, the way that we show up, the value that we were committed to bringing before we were, hijacked, before they showed up, all the things. So what I believe, and this will make sense in a moment, is that there are 3 primary areas of mastery that, when they're missing, make you more likely to be below the line, right? Because I think most of us know that we don't want to react all the time, even before this conversation, right? You probably know that you don't want to let people get under your skin. And we even say that, don't let them push, let it roll off you. Like, we know this. But it's so difficult. And I believe the reason it's so difficult is because there's some kind of foundational levels of awareness that we need to have in order to be able to see other people for where they are. Simply acknowledge where they are in this model, and then based on that, strategically decide, respond, and show up. So I'm going to share with you the model that I share with my clients. Now, this is the framework I use in my leadership program. I'm going to put the slide up. There's a lot of information on it. Don't worry about the information on the slide. I'll go ahead and make it large, except for that very top line. That's really what I want us to focus on. That very top line. Self-mastery, role mastery, and goal mastery. Those are the levels of mastery that, when they're in place, oh my goodness, does it become easier to stay above the line? And I'll tell you what I mean in a moment. I'm just going to tell you very briefly what each time to go into all of them. But I want you to get a real grasp and understanding, and then notice which are missing in some of the people in your life, right? When you look out at the people who you consider to be most difficult, what do you suspect is missing there? And then, of course, I always think we need to turn the flashlight on ourselves and get reflective about, right? Have some reflection time about what that means for us. So let's start with self-mastery. Self is about knowing yourself. It's about understanding where you get in your own. It's, where other people and situations who are not living up to your expectations hijack your leadership effectiveness. Like, this is why other people become spam to our day, to our good mood, why they derail us, right? Why somebody cutting us off in traffic makes us upset, why someone interrupting us while we're speaking in the team meeting or the project meeting makes us upset, right? Why another board member challenging us, makes us want to, put the gloves on. That's self-mastery, okay? Now, the next one is role mastery. Role mastery is about knowing what's actually important for success in your role or your career versus being guided by or believing that what's important is either what's in your job description. And hold on, I need to be on screen for this because you guys need to see my face so you see how much it's not about that. Okay, here we go. You need to understand how real priorities exist in your organization and how to uncover those, right? You need to understand that because we're often guided by the job description, guided by the values, pillars or posters that are in the break room, that are on the annual plan, and that are talked about at the quarterly meetings. But then we wonder who are getting promoted or getting the larger budgets aren't necessarily the people who are representative of those values. That's the nicest way that I can put it. Is that landing, you guys? Is that making sense? Role mastery is understanding what actually moves the needle of success and influence in your role. Understanding who needs to count and doing what. Because otherwise it feels like you're knocking it out of the park and no one seems to care and you don't understand why. Right? And talk about disengagement. That's a whole other conversation. Now I'm going to go on to goal mastery. Now, have you guys been with me before? If you have, I want you to finish this statement because I'm going to finish it after I tell you what goal mastery is. But the only thing more important than where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is, now, if you've been with me before, I want you to fill in the blank in the chat. And I'm going to go on. Goal mastery. This is about having a strategic plan for your career and about being able to actually plan for and manage and mitigate when things go off the rails. Because we have a funny relationship with failure. I actually teach my clients to do failure planning because you have to plan for failure. I had people tell me, well, I don't want to think too much about failure because it might attract it to me. I'm like, are you crazy? Sorry, I shouldn't use the word crazy. But I'm like, are you kidding me? No, on the contrary, having that honest reflection around failure and the things that can possibly go wrong are actually what equip you to be able to show up present even when things do go wrong. And it's not because you thought of everything that could possibly go wrong, but that your ability to show up effectively is not tied to, right? As we started at the beginning, it's not tied to everything going according to plan, right? Okay. I got to continue because I have so much to say about that. But the other things I want you to know about, goal mastery in addition to that strategic plan. Because here's the thing, when you don't have a strategic plan for your career, and your career consists of a series of reactions to other people's decisions and circumstances out of your control, you're not going to have the type of career or impact you want to have. And sometimes we do that because we've gotten lucky. Like there's just the turn of events kind of worked in our favor. But you need to know, right? Luck is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. Let's see how it goes is not a strategy, right? That puts us in a space of constantly and not even reacting from a strategic place where there's intention behind the reaction, but simply like, I gotta go left or right, right? And so I'm gonna just go ahead and choose one. So if you want a successful career, right? If you want successful relationships, you need to focus on what you control. Everything in this framework, it's what you control. That's why I focus on this with my clients. But regarding goal mastery, I want to understand that, when you get to that place, when you get to creating a strategic plan, it's because you've already cleared away all of that comes in those first two. So now you actually know what moves the needle of success. You actually know how to get out of your own way and kind of stop yourself, right? Before talk yourself down or talk yourself off the building, however you want to think about that. Strategic plan is driven by something meaningful other than getting the gold star. You guys with me? Because here's the thing, I'm huge on accomplishment. And we only have about 12 minutes. I'm huge on accomplishment. I think it's wonderful to go for the accomplishment and try to push ourselves and see what we can do. But here's what I want you to distinguish, that there are people, and possibly listening to me right now, who have a plan and are clear about what they want to do, but their plan is coming from a place of, I want to pursue this plan and accomplish everything on it, not because the plan is worthy, but to be. Can you guys see what a big dramatic difference that is in how we show up and the decisions we make for our life? If we're making decisions to try to constantly prove that we are worthy, we're not being strategic, because that's coming from a place of reaction, right? That defense. We need to catch ourselves, and we get onto ourselves when we pretend we're being strategic, but we're actually just playing a small game of trying to get the gold sticker, trying to have the last word, I'll show them, that type of thing. So let's see, I'm coming back to your comments for a little bit. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Yeah, so much in here. You guys are amazing. Foundational. We only have control over our own thoughts, emotions, and responses. Absolutely. The thing is, we know this to be true, but it's still such a challenge for most of us. Okay, so now, of course, where do you start? Where do you start to, hopefully, you distinguish that where you have control is your response to other people. But sometimes it feels nearly impossible, right, to not want to strangle someone. I may say that. And so this is why those 3 pillars of mastery are so important. So here's where I want you to start with this leadership self-assessment. Here's what I'm going to tell you for those of you who need to drop off by chance. I promise that if you show up live, you are going to get, it is the 5 difficult types. So I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But what I want you to do is go ahead and go to bridgewellpro.com/assessment, fill out that form, because I will use that form to actually send you the freebie that I promised. right? The extra resource on difficult people to help you do reactive kind of attitude and response, and then how to make that strategic. And that's going to be on 5 types. There's going to be a larger comprehensive guide that's on 25 types. And again, I'll tell you about that in a second. But go ahead and go into receive that. By the way, as soon as you complete the assessment, you're also going to receive how to deal with what was it? It's how to handle criticism with poise and grace. How to handle criticism with poise and grace. It's one of my short courses. It's one of my favorites. You'll get it for free. So once you fill that in, make sure that if you're already on my list, sorry for all the housekeeping, but I want to keep from annoying you. So if you're already on my list, use the same email. Do not put in a different email, because then you're going to be on my list multiple times, and probably one of my emails is enough per person. So use the same email I have for you. So let's start. Let's go through this assessment and very quickly approach it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best. I want to answer each of these. My career and leadership decisions and actions are intentional and strategic. Scale of 1 to 10. I don't react to other people's bad attitudes. I have self-confidence no matter who's in the room or what's going wrong. I know exactly what's in place and how I fit into that. My good work is noticed and acknowledged. I don't take it personally when my team, my partner, my client doesn't do what they're supposed to do. I don't take it personally. Again, scale of 1 to 10. Where are you on these? For each of these. I'm going to go on to the next. If you missed any, I'll go back to the slide again. But again, on the assessment, you'll see all of them. I have a clear method for course correcting when things don't go according to plan. I don't fly off the handles. I know exactly where to focus my time to excel in my current role or to get my next promotion. I know to demonstrate and to whom in order to grow my influence. Influence. We didn't get to talk about influence, but lack of influence is often at the core of having under-resourced and over-committed teams. So again, that's for another conversation. That's probably a good topic as well. But I want you to understand the importance of that. I have a process. Oh, wrong one. Skipped one. I'm clear about my roadblocks and triggers so they don't sabotage me. I have a process identifying and tackling my own blind spots. And I have a written strategic plan for my career that informs my monthly, weekly, and daily actions. Okay. So now I want you to take stock. You don't need to out yourself in the chat. You can if you want. But how many of these did you score yourself? Let's say, how many did you score yourself above a 7? And I'll go back to the first list. You missed it. I want to take a quick screenshot. All right, they're the first 6. And then they're the second 6. Okay. So now, whatever number you're on, whatever it is, whatever that number is, I want you to think about how you're going to move to a 10 for each of those. Because the closer you are to a 10 on all of these, the more you are spending, let me go back to the slide, your time above the line. You'll notice there's kind of a theme about those, but again, no time to get into all of that, but I want you to notice the more you have above a 7, the more likely you're spending time above the line. Okay? So make a note to yourself. Now, for those of you who already know you absolutely want to start working on this, I actually have a very special, I haven't done this before. You guys know I have a large, and we're not talking about that today. I actually want a really low price point that anybody and everybody can access and benefit from. And that is the Strategic Leadership Bootcamp. I've done a couple of free versions of the bootcamp, of a bootcamp in the past, but this one is a paid bootcamp. So, it's only $197, but I want to let you know what we're doing in that week. It's a 5-day bootcamp. It's not going to be here on, on a live on LinkedIn or Facebook or anything like that. It's going to be a private community portal. And you'll have access to the replays. But here's what I want you to understand, right? Difficult people are missing, one or more of those 3 leadership pillars, right? We talked about the intentional leadership framework, self-mastery, role mastery. People who regularly show up difficult, right, as unpleasant to be with or around, often have significant gaps in more than one of these. So during the boot camp, what we're going to do is we're going to do a deep dive on what that looks like, on the specific tools to pretty and strategically work with people, no matter which part is missing, no matter what it is that they're missing. And then, I think what I like best about it is because although we're doing this from the frame of how to relate to other people, as a bonus, you get to know when that might even be impacting you, right? Because they're the opposite of the same coin, yes? Where it might be impacting you as a leader, where it might be impacting you as someone who's responsible for their career, impacting you in the way that you are supporting your staff members, as it might be impacting you in the way that you're relating with your patients or your research partners or your project teams. You guys with me? So the focus and the lens is seeing how we, in this deep dive, what you need to know and how you need to respond, and so that you can continue to be strategic no matter what it is that's. But the byproduct is you get to recognize how you can adjust how you show up so that you're above that line and strategic more often than not. Okay. So that we're doing in a nutshell, right? You'll understand things like why people steal credit. And by the way, I haven't even given you guys the link to sign up. So that's how great I am at this part of this. But let me go ahead and see if I can drop it in there for you. Oh, here we go. Okay, it's strategicleadershipbootcamp.com. It's just a checkout page. It's super simple. But I also want to let you know that in addition to the camp, because we're having a 5-day boot camp, those are the 60-minute sessions, also having a second 60-minute session where the entire group is getting together for on-the-spot coaching. So I'm going to ask you to submit your coaching questions in advance, and we're going to go through. We're all going to be live on the screen. It's not going to be like this. So we're going to be able to see each other. It might be a lot of us, but we're going to be able to see each other. So just letting you know. And also, you're going to receive the Bad Boss Breakthrough Solution. I don't know if you're familiar with that course. That's the first course I created. It's pretty awesome, but I haven't been spending time selling that course. But that course was specifically created for people who wanted to kind of reclaim their careers in sense of self and confidence after a bad spell at work, in particular with the bad boss. So it's about a 6-8-week course, depending on how you run. But you can binge watch it over a weekend or two if you want to, and that will become available as soon as you enroll as well. So you get that, and of course the guide to 25 difficult personalities, which again, if you're here, whether you buy or not, you're going to get the 5, but you'll get the 25 when you enroll in the program as well. So that is all. That is what I'm offering. I hope you take me up on it because it's going to be incredible. If you've been to any of my other boot camps, you know that they're amazing and that it's probably one of the best free or paid programs you've attended. And this one, of course, is going to be over the top because we have coaching, which I'm not able to do in the boot camps because they're typically thousands of people there. So this I'm very excited about, and I cannot wait for you guys to join and get started as well. So comments, let me see, what am I missing? Okay. So I did say I'm going to stay on for any question. So I want you to share your key takeaways, and I want you to share your questions. So if you haven't dropped off yet, I know you're dropping off because we're at the top of the hour, but I promised I would stay for whatever questions you have. And I'm glad to get involved with that. So please drop your questions in the chat. Let me know what questions you have about the boot camp. Let me know if you've joined, to see you there at the end of June. Again, wanted to provide a really, really low cost option at $197. So definitely go and enroll. Because it's a Zoom, there are limited numbers. So this is going out, we have a few spots saved for the people who are on the wait list, but otherwise, we have over 400 spots available. So definitely get signed up. So the assessment, I just see a question here. The assessment, you won't get results directly to your assessment. So that was conversation, in another session that we had. What I can do though, that might be, I'm going to send you another training that really talks about what each of those individual items mean. So if you've taken the assessment, you'll go ahead and get this. So if the individual items means in terms of where it's kind of missing or maps to self-mastery, role mastery, and goal mastery, because every single one of those questions is mapped. Okay, so thank you so much for asking the question. Thank you for asking. Okay, you guys, what was most valuable from today's session? What are you taking with you? What was most valuable from today's session? What are you taking with you? And you're so welcome. You're so welcome. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing all of your responses. Thank you. I'm so glad that it was fantastic. I'm so glad that it was informative. You guys are so welcome. And again, I'm here, but I do want to hear your takeaways. What are your key takeaways? Have a strategic plan. Oh, you guys, did we ever finish that statement? The only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organizational strategic plan is knowing where your organization fits into yours. You guys with me? The only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is knowing where they fit into yours. So I want you to take that with you. That is so incredibly, incredibly important. Okay, the decision driver journey and a new way to look at difficult people's behavior. Yes, absolutely. Yes, thanks, Terry. What else? Okay. And I'm glad that the information was incredible. I'm glad that it was informative. Thank you so much. Yeah, have a strategic plan. And I love that. Master your strategy. Absolutely. What else? What is your key takeaway? What did you notice or discover as a result of being in the session? Using a decision driver to understand how I should work with my peers. Yes. Okay, so Sumitra, you like the 3 parts, the framework. Yes. Absolutely. It's incredibly powerful. And I think of course, I love the framework. I created it. But what I love about that framework in particular is that it really does focus on things that you control, right? Because I don't want to spend time talking about how to make someone else do something different, right? But rather how you need to show up to elicit the best from yourself and others. eliciting the best from yourself and others toward a common goal. Doesn't matter what your title is. Again, doesn't matter what your span of control is, your authority level. If you're showing up and eliciting the self and others toward a common goal, you're showing up like a leader. And that is the point. When you show up like a leader, you're always in that top level. So let's see. I know there are more comments that I'm missing. Just, okay, I got you. You can't multitask and you miss too much. That's okay. That's okay. Again, it's a live. You can just go ahead and watch it on whatever platform you're joining. You can go ahead and rewatch. Let's see. The aha moments that show me how to think about these challenges I've had at work and where that could be. Yes. I got to admit, now, I'm a coach and I work with all sorts of types of people, and I love everybody, absolutely everybody that I work with. And I find the areas of myself I'm still working on are the areas where I notice I have a flash of thought in my head that I don't particularly appreciate about a person that I'm coaching, which is just part of being a human being, right? So the areas where we find ourselves challenged, of course, are also going to be the areas that we find other people challenge us just for having that same challenge themselves. Anyway, again, a whole other conversation, but absolutely. Yes, if we're making decisions based on that we are worthy, we are not being strategic. By definition, we're not being strategic, because everything we're doing it's coming from within the validation trap. We didn't get to talk about that much today, but it's coming from within the validation trap. Chuck, yes, we need to have a plan, and it has to be a plan worthy of messing it up, being upset about it, having the 5-second funeral, dusting ourselves off and getting back in again, right? It has to be a plan meaningful and significant enough to keep us moving forward. And just so you're clear, right? Just for all of us, just so that we're all really clear, this doesn't, because even when you're walking into a meeting, right? That decision driver journey is at work. When you walk into a meeting, you can show up saying, I'm going to show up, and well, I don't know what we're talking about because I'm new here. I know nothing about this subject matter, or they didn't give me sort of, prep materials. I'm going to show up and just try to notice what everybody else's maybe agenda or perspective is, right? Then you show up curious. Then you're able to questions. But if you're showing up, right, making decisions below the line and thinking, well, I don't even know why I'm here. They didn't send me an agenda or prep materials. This isn't my area of expertise. So-and-so doesn't like me. Show up very differently. You're going to show up below the line, right? Let's see. Yeah, it really resonates. Yes, thank you, Rachel. And so good to see you, Rachel. It's been too long. Okay, complete the assessment. Yeah, if you complete the assessment, I'll send you training that simply talks through where each of those map to in self-mastery, role mastery, and goal mastery. Okay, so that's for you, Letitia, and everybody else. Okay, how come I get not so fast? So Princesita, I think that's it. So the boot camp is just the 5 days, the 1 hour of training and then the extra hour of coaching. So that is just the 5 days. But if you're interested in my regular 3-month program, you can go to bridgewellpro.com/group and you can check that out. I believe the next dates are up. I believe the fall dates are up, but you can go ahead that out and ask me any questions you have about that, by sending me a quick note. But I wasn't getting into that today, but definitely please feel free to check out the group program. Okay. Did I miss any questions? Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap up and I'm going to let you go back to your Wednesday. Well, there's no copy of this broadcast, but it is available to watch the replay on YouTube and on LinkedIn, and I believe on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, and also on Twitter. So you can go into any of the platforms, watch the replay. If you're on my list, if you registered, also going to get a link for the replay so that you have access to it. Okay. The 5-second funeral is new to me. There's not a specific class on it. One of the items that we're going to cover in the 5-day boot camp, specifically because we need to have a different relationship with setbacks and disappointment. Right now we get really dramatic about setbacks and disappointments and frustrations, like I said earlier, rejection and embarrassment and all the things. We get really really funny about those. So you're going to understand, since we're talking about the frame of reference, looking at other people, why other people kind of stay in this space of defeat and how you need to engage with them instead. And at the same time, you'll understand about the 5-second funeral. Okay, excellent. Thank you guys so much. And Barbara, you need help with the 5-second funeral? Okay, so just to be clear, and I'm guessing when you say you need help with the 5-second funeral, right, this is probably all of us. I'm assuming that, and you're saying that because you hold on to things, right? You can't let go. Your brain keeps going over and over and over and over it. I liken it to like with a little cuticle that's kind of out of place, and then you keep on rubbing it, like you can't stop rubbing it. It's the same kind of thing. When there's that kind of abrasion, if you want to think of it that way, it calls our to keep on engaging with it. But here's the thing, that happens more likely than not because you're being driven not by a bigger intention or purpose, something that your mission or goal, but rather by whether someone or something looked or happened the way you wanted it to. So you can let me know, Barbara, if that does not for you. But oftentimes I find that that's the case. So drop me a note in the chat and let me know, does that resonate? Are you more concerned with their response, bigger intention and purpose that you were after? Because if you're more bigger intention and purpose you're after, of course their response might bother you, because we should never not expect people to behave appropriately, right? We should not normalize bad behavior, but what we want to do is make sure that it doesn't hijack. We should expect higher and more from people and recognize where they went off the rails, and then figure out what we need to do about it to proceed, how we reconnect with what we were there to do in the first place, right? That goal or intention that makes it worthy of putting up with the difficult personality. Okay, it does resonate. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Let's see. Yeah, go of things and bad characteristics. Yeah, and that's the thing. We'll talk more about in the 5-day boot camp, but we absolutely do have and we should have expectations of people. I'm not suggesting that we don't. We need to be really careful. We need to be super careful when those expectations become prerequisites or requirements for us to be well and show up powerfully. Think about that for a second. We need to be careful for when our expectations of other people become a prerequisite for us to be effective, show up power, bring high quality thinking, stay strategic. Other people's behavior and whether they met a certain expectation shouldn't be what defines the quality of your thinking. So you guys kind of sit with that. You're welcome, Victoria. I'm so good to see you. Okay, folks. Okay, we're at 1:16. I don't see any other specific questions. Obviously, we can continue the conversation, but I'm glad to, wrap it up here if you guys don't have any other questions. But I love how engaged you guys are. I think this topic was long overdue. It was valuable to a lot of you, and I hope that you're all putting it to work. And I hope that a whole bunch of you I'm going to see in the boot camp at the end of June. So thank you so much. Happy end of May. And I will see you guys for next month's event. Okay, bye-bye.